Again, COVID?
Just ask when you go back up there. You got a phobia. Either that or sitting down. I mean, either one. I understand.
Got some pictures to show you there. You got a situation. I give it back.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome those that are here in person and those that are watching online. Happy Wednesday. I will call our March work session to order. And let's begin by having a moment of silence for the folks of Ukraine and everything that's going on in the world. Okay, Madam Clerk, would you kindly call the roll?
Mr. Cole,
Here.
Mr. Parrott,
Here.
Mr. Hunter, Mrs. Amos,
Here.
Mr. Vincent,
Here.
Mr. Reed,
Here.
Mr. Dwyer.
Yes, here.
Okay, our first agenda item is to discuss the write-off of certain delinquent real estate taxes and utility bills. Mr. Davis or Mr. Cole, which one of you are speaking to that? Oh, Madam Treasurer.
Yes, sir.
Helps when you look up, doesn't it?
It's okay. During the Finance Committee meeting, Mr. Cole can contest, I brought to Finance my utility, my taxes, my accounts receivable. And showing everything Mr. Cole had brought up, that I get together and bring to work session all the utility bills that are over 5 years old. And as you can remember, we used to write them off yearly, and then we said, no, we're gonna leave them on the books for at least 5 years, try to collect. Well, it's been over 5. So what I have brought you is everything from 2012 to 2017 to write off. We're leaving everything else on the books. So I did you a summary sheet that listed 2012 to 17. It's the amount of $43,115.22. Yes, they have been sent letters. They have been sent to set off debt. We have done everything we know to do. Every year we reapply for set off debt. All of that has been done. So I brought that to you, and then I also want to bring to you some accounts receivable. Taxes, I'd like to hold off. The personal properties, not but a few. I want to dig into it some more, get with the county. Instead of piecemealing it, bring you some here and some there, I'd rather bring it to you all at one time. So my first thing is ask you for utility, and then the accounts receivable, it's the same thing I did for finance. These are old ones. They're 2019 and 20. All but one is under $300, which Mr. Elder, our attorney, said it's not going to cost to try to collect it. The one that's over it is the grave opening for Jennings McMillan, which is now incarcerated. We can't collect. And since then, all grave openings are prepaid up front, so that will never happen again. So the amount of the accounts receivable is $1,827.13.
Anything if over 5 years old, the chances of collecting it are next to nothing.
Yes, sir.
So what's the pleasure of council?
I make a motion that we delete the accounts that are over 5 years old for collections.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent.
Yes.
On a unanimous vote, the motion has passed.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item, Madam Clerk, are you speaking to that?
Hang on. On the accounts receivable, that's not 5 years old. That's 2019 and 2020.
Okay.
So if we could have a separate motion to write off the accounts receivables, that one that I've given you for the 1,827.13. That's
Okay.
uncollectible.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to write off the accounts receivable.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mrs. Amos.
Yes.
On a unanimous vote, the motion is passed.
Okay, next item, charging disconnect for delinquent utility accounts.
Mayor, we talked about this pre-pandemic, about moving from our current, which is the current plus 2 past due bills before we disconnect service for an occupant. What we had discussed before, and we're suggesting today, is to move to current plus 1 past due bill. A few things. One, it's easier for people hopefully to catch up and not be so far behind. And two, we just saw for utility bills, for us to write off, it would be less to write off with less funds being owed. And I'm not asking for a decision today, because we could make this into, we've got to make sure we can make this into the ordinance or a resolution for you to pass, instead of just a motion in a second. But we wanted it for discussion to see if we were moving in the right direction and council was in favor.
Discussion?
Yeah, I think it's, we need to minimize our risk, and by moving to the current plus 1 is a better policy for the town.
Everybody in agreement? Just nod. Okay. You good, Mr. Davis, with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, where are we? 5. Discussion, salary adjustments for E911 communications operators.
I had discussed this in finance at a prior meeting, that this may be coming down the road after we had discussed earlier this year about adjusting police officers, and then in the future, how we would begin to fix some compression in future budget years with others. And we also fixed public works in a way of bumping up the hiring range. And so the other group in public safety is telecommunicators, 911 emergency communicators. They're currently hiring at anywhere between 28 and 29,000. In looking at a study that was done for the city of Lexington that I was able to get to view, they were looking more at redoing their ranges from minimum to maximum. But one thing that was included was an average actual. And in the average actual is what an average is. From the top to the bottom, what is the average pay in that communications operator 1 position? And the average in the area around them that responded is about $35,000 for an average pay. Our average would not be that at this point, and our hiring is low. And there's been conversation that localities around us plan to increase their hiring pay that would be higher than our current. And so I am suggesting that we increase, and not for action today, just for discussion and conversation, I'd have to bring it back to you in a resolution, is that we raise the hiring salary that we would hire at for a brand new person at $33,000. And then we would adjust from that minimum person, whatever that difference is. So from 2880, the lowest person, to 33 is almost $5,000, 4,900 and some change. We would adjust all the other employees in the communication operator 1 and 2 positions by that amount unless they are already at the maximum salary. And they would just get to the maximum if it takes them to that point. You're looking for a full year at a right around 80 some $1,000. We're only going to be in a partial year if you do it in the middle of this year. So it wouldn't even be maybe a quarter of that, obviously, we have left, which we can use not through contingency, but we have wireless 911 funds that we receive from the state. To give you an idea, it can only be used for public safety, so we're using part of that we've accumulated for the radio project that's going on this year as a capital project. But we could use it if council decided to do this in the middle of this budget year from that to cover it, and then in next year's budget, we would budget it from the general fund.
What specifically are you asking for today?
That you all are potentially in favor for me to bring back a resolution for the current year to do that probably $30,000 worth, if that.
Can we have a straw poll?
Just what's the pleasure?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I would encourage it.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Bring back the resolution. Everybody's good.
I have a question. Where would this put them in comparison to other jurisdictions?
It depends on what jurisdictions you want me to look at. I pulled it from what is the potential. There's conversation of one going to 40, but I've been in conversation with someone that that it may not be that, but they're looking at it in their budget right now for next year, but probably won't hit that mark maybe. Another is 35, and I'm not sure that it'll hit that mark because they haven't looked at that either. But going by an area that's similar to us, if the average salary is 35, and you're taking that from the top to the bottom, making an average, I think 33 is a good hiring salary.
We've made adjustments certainly in the last few months to police officer salaries, and I would say that dispatchers are the lifeline for police officers, and it's critical that that we retain and hire good dispatchers to support our police officers. So I think it's important that we move on with it.
Can I just give you some I should have said this before. We have a total of 16 employees in those two pay grades. 7 of them have 10 plus years. 3 of them have 1 to 9 years, and 6 of them have a year or less. So we've already seen where, just like in other positions, that there's some turnover than there has before. In some of it's a position, but also I want to add one other thing is for a reminder of everybody, we added Longwood. We didn't add pay, but we added positions to help them, but we didn't increase the pay. We added emergency medical dispatch, but we didn't increase the pay. So I think this is in line with a lot of that, and hopefully for the retention, like the mayor said.
What are we getting now from Longwood per year for doing their dispatching?
$350,000.
That should help immensely.
It does.
Okay, next item, even more fun. Discussion of the 2022-23 local choice health insurance rates.
Yes. Just to give you an idea, no decision today unless you want to make it. However, I would need one by next meeting on the 10th, which is your regular meeting next week, because Anthem has to have we have to provide Anthem our renewal selection no later than March 25th, and there's no extensions for any reason, according to them. Our overall average increase is 8.3% this year. Last year, it wasn't that amount. So it was a substantial increase this year. You have two different methods in front of you. Last year, we looked at a lot more, so this is better. We only have two to look at this year. We looked at last year splitting, it came down to what was agreed by council was to share the increase of cost over 3 years. And the method of doing that, for the 250, you'll look at the sheet that says share calculation on the right, which was 33% employee, 66% town, and then the 500 plan was 50-50. In finance, the discussion was the increase was so much that, and especially even in the 500 plan, the 500 plan increased greatly compared to previous years, that we might want to look at a different avenue of calculating this than last year that was agreed on by council. And so Mr. Cole said, hand it over to me, let me look at it. So we let him look at it. And so that's the other sheet that you have of calculation. And I'd be happy to turn it over to the finance chair if I did not adequately explain this information to you.
So what we're looking at, basically the 250 plan rates are increasing 7.5%, but for some reason the 500 plan is going up 10.4%. So it kind of gives those that are under that plan a little bit more of an increase. But to make things a little simple than trying to do the 66-33 split or whatever, if you look in the first column, it tells you what the current employees are paying, what percentage of the health insurance costs that they're paying of those premiums. The individual, they're paying for the 250, 6.8%. So what we need to look at is if our goal is that we want the employees to pay 30% of the premium for a single, then last year we talked about looking at this over a course of a few years to gradually increase. So what you see is that this is the current percentage. So if we didn't change these percentages, this is what it would look like for the staff. A $4.74 increase for those that are employee only per month, or $2.19 per payday. And so forth for the rest of them. So I guess what we're looking for the finance committee is what do you want us to be as far as the employee contribution? We still want to increase it a little bit each year to help offset of what the town is, town share. But at what increments do we want? Because if we, like I said, if you go by the first worksheet, someone that's under the Key Care 500 family is going to see a $80.76 per payday increase in health insurance. And that's a pretty stiff increase. If they keep the current percentage, they're looking at $25. Anybody that has the 250 plan is looking at $22.56 per payday of an increase. So what we're just looking for guidance so that we can bring the employee share. Now, as far as the rates from Anthem, there's no negotiating with Anthem. This is your rates, and we need to accept those and move on. We've got a little bit more time to discuss the employee contribution because this doesn't take in effect until July 1, and we would need to have something at least by June 1st so the employees know.
No, we've got to have that by the end of March. We have to tell Anthem when we sign up, we got to tell them what the share is.
Okay, so we're going to have to make a decision next week.
No.
And we only got this at the first part of February, so there wasn't much turnaround time from them.
No, that's probably generous in most cases. So I guess the question would be, where do you want the employee share to be? So we can plug it into the worksheet that I did, and we can have those rates out there.
So what's the pleasure of council? What's the discussion?
And the thing is, if you need to look at it for another week, and, I mean, you don't have to vote today, we just need to vote next week.
You want to take the sheets and kind of devour them a little bit and then come back and have a discussion next week? Let's do that. Okay, anything else on the insurance?
No, sir.
All right,
I can redo this sheet and put different increases, and then let them post it as Dropbox so you can look at it before next week. Okay.
okay. Item 7 is redistricting legal requirements. Mr. Davis?
Yes, sir. You have in front of you some code sections from the state code. It was previously discussed about having a public hearing at the April meeting. After we had talked about the open houses that we had and those types of things. However, when I looked at some of the advertisements from a few counties, there was a code section that didn't register with me, having not done redistricting before, and that is 24.2-129, which is listed in 24.2306. So 306 states that there can't be any changes to precincts and within 60 days before a general election. But in that, it lists 129 as far as further advertisement requirements. And when you look at 129, it provides that actions are required prior to the enactment of covered practices. And it then lists what covered practices are or mean. And the third one is exactly what we plan to do because it's a decennial redistricting. If you look at section B, it says you have really two options. One is you file with the Attorney General's office and wait up to 60 days. If you hear nothing, then it's taken as they automatically approve it, that it is a covered practices fine. Or you put out a notice saying you're going to be receiving feedback for 45 days or 45-day time period that you're going to receive feedback for a minimum of 30 days. And at which time you can get that public feedback by mail, by website, a list of ways. And for people to view, have options to view the ordinance that you're going to potentially have at a public hearing and to review the maps. That's a shorter period of time, and it would still make it to where that 45-day period would end on the 23rd. That's a Saturday, but we would make it April the 25th, get it in next week's Wednesday's paper. We would then still meet the requirement of 306, which we do with every ordinance, and is that we have to have advertised for 2 consecutive weeks prior to the public hearing and 1 consecutive week prior to the public hearing and before it can be enacted. So we would still have time to do that and make the May 11th council meeting for the public hearing and potential enactment. And that would still give you over 30 days before the June 21st primary.
Sounds like a plan.
Any questions about it? We'll move forward.
All right, there's nothing else on the agenda. Does anyone else have anything? Mr. Davis?
No, sir.
We good, Chief? We good? Anybody else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I have one thing. I have talked with VML, and we're trying to schedule a regional supper to be held here in Farmville for the VML. And I will get back with you to let you know the dates that we can come up with and locations we can have this event at.
Thank you, sir. All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it, meeting's adjourned.